Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We're coming to you live on March 24th, 2026. You're tuning in for using Agile to unlock the success of nonprofit collaborations with your instructor, Diane Leonard. And she is president of D.H. Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services, LLC. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled you could tune in for today's webinar with us. If you could follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Moving forward, if you want to revisit today's course, you can find the recording, as well as the PDF of the slides, any resource items here in the courses section. But I have put a link to the presentation slides for you in the chat as well. Moving forward, if you want to check out another webinar with us, you'll log in like you did today and click on that green banner to join. We ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because it helps to cut down on audio feedback. And if you find that the sound is coming out of the wrong device, you can always come down to the bottom of your screen. Where you see a telephone icon on the screen, you might have a headset icon, but either way, that does pull up a list of your speaker devices and you can select the proper audio output. Even though we ask you to join on mute because we are recording, we do still want to encourage class participation. We want to know your questions, your comments, any tech support issues that I can help you navigate through, and we'll primarily rely on the public chat for this. If you don't yet have it open, you can go over to this messages column and click on public chat. And that'll open up a chat between you, the webinar attendees, me, the NLC staff, and your instructor, Diane Leonard. You'll just come down here to the box that says send message to public chat, type what you'd like to say or ask, and you can either hit enter or you can click on the little paper airplane button to submit. We also have the shared notes section. If you open that up, that'll give you a list of helpful links, things like the webinar feedback survey, the link to go to our YouTube channel, and again, the link to any resource items that are included. If you did join with your mic on, you can always just come down to the bottom of the screen and mute yourself here. And if you think we missed a question along the way, you can always use the hand raise feature to the bottom right corner of your screen to draw attention to it. We would like if you took a moment to open up the public chat now and introduce yourselves. You could let us know your name, where you're tuning in from, your work or your role in Indian country, and your tribal affiliation if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and not have your own affiliation. That is okay too. All are welcome. And then just a quick final note before I hand it over to Diane. You do have a red menu panel to the far left of your screen. If you don't have it expanded, you might just see the icons. But either way, if you click on that, know that it's going to pull you out of the webinar and it's going to take you to what you clicked on the menu right away. You can always just rejoin by clicking on that green banner. But I just want to give you a heads up because it does pull you out without like a warning message or like an "Are you sure?" So it's just something to keep in mind throughout the webinar today. But while you're introducing yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor, Diane Leonard. And Diane, I have made you presenter now.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. I'm so excited to be with you. We're going to be talking about all things collaboration today. And I say nonprofit collaborations, I mean really grant-seeking organizations, tax-exempt organizations, nonprofits and tribal organizations. All collaborations welcome in today's conversation. So super happy that you are here for the conversation. And often I'm talking about specifically grant topics. And don't get me wrong, today's collaboration discussion often lends itself to some grant-related discussion, but we're going to look at collaborations and broaden our definition beyond grants, although that is one of my first professional loves, got to be honest. I've spent my entire career since I graduated from college working with, thinking about, talking about grants, first as a grant maker, then as a grant seeker, as an employee, and I've been running D.H. Leonard Consulting for over 20 years now. But way back when, I actually have a minor in organizational behavior. I love talking about how people work together within an organization and how organizations work with each other. I love it. And so all things Agile project management are my second professional passion because, yeah, we spend a lot of time at work, and the way we work together is the way we actually can create the most impact in our communities. So that's a little bit about me. Today I am being fueled by, actually I didn't get to run outside, but I did cycle inside, and so that checked the movement box, and I had one really good fresh cup of caffeinated coffee. I've now moved on to decaf tea, in case you're wondering, is this all caffeination on screen? No, it's a mix. Now we're on to decaf. And I see that you're saying hello in the public chat, letting me know where you're joining us from today. If you want to let me know what's fueling your work, what's hydrating you, happy to have you share that as well, but no pressure to do that. Our time together, the 90 minutes always flies by when I'm here at the Native Learning Center, and I have no doubt today will be the same. In our time together, I want us to discuss different techniques and approaches that can help improve whatever collaboration you're approaching. I'm looking for you to, in your collaborations, think about what it means to you, to your colleagues, to your tribal organization. What does it mean to say that you are going to prioritize individuals and interactions over the processes and tools that we might have to rely on when we're working collaboratively together? So what's the goal? Think about what that means, what it uniquely could look like for you to apply this Agile value. Our values in Agile ways of working, we're going to start there and talk a little bit more about what they mean so that we have some shared understanding. We're going to talk about collaboration, again, make sure we have some shared understanding, and we're going to look at some techniques that can help us with facilitating collaborations that lean towards that Agile value of individuals and interactions, emphasizing that more than over the processes and tools. Don't get me wrong, I love a good conversation about processes and tools, but this will be more how a process supports the individual interactions. That'll be really where we spend most of our time today. I will at the end ask if you have any outstanding questions, but I have that public chat literally front and center on my big curved monitor in front of me, and so I'm watching for you to share any questions that you have. I might also occasionally ask for you to share a quick response, a word, a phrase, a Y for yes or N for no along the way. It's always optional, but I do certainly welcome and appreciate it when you're able to participate in the public chat. I told you a little bit about my background, and because I love talking about grants, maybe you're not surprised that I love talking about the meaning of words. And so you're right. I had to look up what is a formal dictionary definition for the word collaboration. It is a noun, and it means the action of working with someone to produce or to create something. All right, there wasn't anything really surprising in that definition. So when we say collaboration, though, what is your initial reaction? You love collaborating. It's like your favorite way to get work done. Or it sort of has like those school project vibes where you're worried that not everybody's going to carry their weight on the project, but you want to still get an A on the project. And so like you're worried about the unevenness. It doesn't feel great. Yeah, you don't have to tell me. You could be anywhere between those two examples I gave for how you feel about it. Collaboration is a great way to amplify our impact, or what we want to see change, what we want to see be better and stronger in our communities. Now, because again, I love the dorky stuff related to wordsmithing. What's it mean? How often is it used? When did it really start to become highly used or widely used? And so I did. I looked at the word usage on Google. And on the very far left-hand side of this image, where we see our two axes combined, that is the 1800s. So the word collaboration didn't exist back then, according to the online sources. Really started to grow as we got into the 1900s, really more actually after World War I. And so it was more in the 1920s and 30s that we were seeing the increase. We see that steep slope for the use of the word collaboration. And it sort of flattened out a little bit, and that puts us in like the 60s and 70s. And then come the 1980s, it wasn't just an era of neon colors and things like that. No, the word collaboration and its usage took right back off again. And then, interestingly, has plateaued, if not sort of fallen off just a teeny tiny bit. So I find that to be interesting. We saw two distinct jumps in its use, and it means something really different to all of us based on our past experiences. It's sometimes forced collaboration, sometimes it's by choice. Yeah, we think this is a good idea, it's mutually beneficial. So what does it mean to you? I see that Imogene has already shared some positive words in the public chat about collaboration. It means networking, means teamwork. Are there other words or phrases that you want to add to our working definition today about collaboration? How would you define it? No judgment in the words. I'd love to see what you have to say. Becky says team, partnership. Great, I love it. We're building a good little word bank here about how we would define collaboration. Anyone else have any other words that they want to add? When I think collaboration, I think complexity. I think ground rules. I think amplification. So those are some weighty words. Some feel a little more positive. Some feel a little stressful for what it might mean. But those are some of the words that also come to mind for me. When we think about collaboration, there's 4 primary types. And what's interesting is that one of your words about collaboration is right on the screen. So Imogene, that's really cool. You typed in networking, and look at that. It is here on the screen. So networking is a type of collaboration. Now, going back to my grant world, where I spend so much of my time, there's often a debate when it comes to grant makers who like to see collaboration. To them, it feels like a stronger return on investment, a better use of their grant dollars. So there's many grant makers who really push applicants collaborating. But then there becomes the secondary conversation about, well, what do you really mean by collaboration? If you're putting it in your application, what do you mean? Do you mean, number 4 on the screen, the full collaboration? Dependency on each other in order to get work products done, in order to meet some shared goals and objectives? Or they're wondering if what you really mean is coordination or cooperation. So number 1, the networking, pretty lightweight, all the way up to number 4, full collaboration, that dependency on each other in order to achieve some shared goals and objectives. There's a lot of room for gray in between. And that's what often grant makers want to understand. Show us, tell us what it means. One way that grant makers will have you prove the type of collaboration you have: memorandums of understanding, memorandums of agreement. We see lots of federal agencies, if they're talking about collaboration, ask either that you attach as part of your application what the memorandum of agreement or understanding is, or to say who it is, what it says, big picture, and what the date is when it expires, what period of time it covers. So that's the sort of formal proof they're looking for in terms of that it's a full collaboration, not just kind of in name only. So I'm very curious, how many of you in your tribal organization have collaborations that meet that more robust standard, have a memorandum of agreement or understanding in place with at least one organization, one other external organization? Go ahead and let me know in the public chat, please, why for yes and for no. Do you have any of those formal, those full collaborations, the way I've described them? Something like an MOU, an MOA, as a contractual agreement between your tribal organization and an external group. So why for yes and for no? I'm not going to ask you about all 4, because it's usually a pretty fair assumption that 1, 2, and 3, networking, cooperation, and coordination, are present somewhere within every organization. But the full collaboration, that much more formal structure, I can't make any assumptions about that. Some organizations, they gravitate towards that structure. They enjoy that level of collaboration that works well for their organization, it works well for their leaders. For others, it's not necessarily their comfort zone. They can get a lot of their work done, they can get a lot of impact created, they can get a lot of their mission accomplished without it. Different organizations, different reasons, different things. So it looks like some of you do have those full collaborations in place. Whether you do or you don't, I'd like to talk about the Agile value, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, because this value applies to all 4 types of collaboration that I just had on the screen. We're going to look at actually where this value sits in relation to the other 4 values, or I should say the other 3 values. There's 4 in total, so we'll look at them as a whole. But I want to give a little context. Why do I think that this Agile value is, I don't want to say like the magic key, the secret sauce. I don't want to say that this is like the perfect thing that will make all collaborations amazing and awesome. Wow, this value can help. So why is it that tribal organizations, that nonprofit organizations, that grant-seeking organizations, why do they focus on collaboration? Communities, really, you can thrive, you can amplify impact because of partnerships, because of collaborations. Resources are tight. I know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Financial resources are tight. And so if we can pool our resources through one of the 4 forms of collaboration, perhaps we can accomplish more in our community. Therefore, our communities are not just surviving, they're thriving as a result of partnerships. So that goes to our expanded reach in terms of maybe it's awareness, or in terms of numbers served, or of knowledge gained, of behaviors changed. But that increased, how do we accomplish our mission? How do we accomplish our goals and our objectives? By having more partners involved, by the sharing of resources and awesome skills together. Let's reach more folks. There can be a stronger sense, or a stronger true reality of sustainability. Sustainability can mean, do we have the financial resources in order to keep the doors open and the lights on? Collaboration doesn't always impact that definition of sustainability, but collaboration likely impacts the definition of sustainability if we're talking about the sharing of understanding, the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of models for replication in different communities. That is also a type of sustainability that's important when we think about the sort of impact we create in communities. So through collaboration, even those lower levels of collaboration, networking, cooperation, coordination, those 3 types of collaboration still can have significant impact in terms of the sustainability of an idea or of an approach, beyond what might have initially been paid for by, say, a particular grant. So it can help it spread. And then why else do we focus on collaboration? I know it says shared resources. That kind of plays out across all 4 of these, but it's the shared innovation that I really want to focus on. The idea that testing new ways of working, testing new hypotheses for how we could create impact or create change in the community, having multiple organizations, multiple teams benefit from being part of a hypothesis, from being part of the analysis. Hey, what happened? Did it work? Did it go as we planned? What might we change next time? Now we're spreading those experiences and that knowledge further, and then it actually becomes kind of circular in nature, and it points us back to it has enhanced sustainability for more people learning these lessons in service of our own communities. These are all really positive things. Yeah, like Diane, we know these could be great things. But collaboration isn't always sunshine and rainbows, is it? Sometimes it's stressful. I often call my scrunchy face especially on screen. Sometimes I call that my grant face. It's the stressed face that people make when I walk into a digital or physical room and they learn that I love grants. So grants are stressful. Unfortunately, the same sort of thing happens sometimes when I walk into a room, digital or physical, and we start talking about collaboration. Like, oh, you're making the stress collaboration face. You may have recently had a stressful experience around one of the 4 items on the screen right now. Group A versus Group B have different enough goals or priorities that it's sort of like oil and vinegar. Not going together real smoothly. It could be Group B and Group C have very different methods for how they communicate with each other, asynchronously or synchronously, and so there's information gaps, knowledge gaps. We're not keeping each other up to date. We're not real sure what the other person or the other collaborative group is doing. It could be that there is a unwillingness to bend, to adapt who we are as an organization in order to find common ground. That could be something, that lack of flexibility between organizations. And lastly, if collaborations aren't mutually agreed upon for who does what and how is this going to benefit us all, it could be that one portion of the collaboration is putting in way more effort than is appropriate given what the structure was designed to be, what level of collaboration it was designed to be, and that could lead to burnout. Maybe one part of the collaboration is really just doing too many heroic efforts in order to make things happen. So there's misalignment between expectations and deliverables between the groups, and you know how the rest of this story goes. It's not a positive one. So any of these 4 things could be present in any collaboration. We have to be very careful in our structure of collaborations in order to avoid, to not have these 4 things crop up. Don't worry, you don't have to tell me if you've ever experienced any of these 4 in any of your collaborations. We're going to talk today about how we avoid having them happen, how we minimize our risk of having them happen. This is why I want to talk about Agile. So capital A, Agile, we are talking about a mindset related to our ways of working. This is not about a particular methodology for project management. This is instead talking about how do we as groups of professionals think about being adaptable and collaborative together. How do we continuously improve the ways in which we work together? That's what we're talking about with Agile today. I'm curious, could you let me know how many of you have heard of Agile before? Go ahead, I put a delineator in the public chat. If you'd be so kind just to let me know. Y for yes, S for you think you've heard about it, N for no. And there's no judgment in this question. There's no right answer. It's just to help me understand what we've got going on with folks that are with us today. So have you heard of Agile the way I just described it? And no, right, I was not talking about Agile in terms of our flexibility. Getting older, flexibility is important, but that's not what we're talking about. We're thinking instead about our mindset for how we work together. Okay, so some of you have heard of this in some places. Others, this is new. So what I'd love to introduce to you then is the 4 values. If a team says that they are working in an Agile way, if a team says that they are an Agile team, that doesn't mean anything about how often they meet or where they meet or what software tool they do or don't use. There's nothing else that it guarantees us except that it is a group of individuals who are working towards a shared goal that have these 4 values guiding their interactions. And there's 4 of them. They're not in a prioritized order. It's not like a late night show top, 5 list or anything. Nope. They are all important in a team, and they all contain the same structure. So the way that the structure of each value reads, there's the phrase on the left. So the very first one listed in the Agile Manifesto is individuals and interactions. Then we have the word over, telling us that that first phrase is more important than, should have more emphasis, more attention in our team than the second part of this statement. So in the case of the first value, individuals and interactions are more important, get more emphasis than the processes and tools. These other 3 values that are listed on the screen, also awesome, but not the emphasis today. I will say that number 4 on the screen, responding to change over following a plan, I think is a really, really important one to keep in mind in collaborations, but it's going to come out a little bit later on. We need to first make sure that we're keeping value number 1, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, front and center when we are establishing our collaborations from the very beginning. So these 4 values, if you're super interested and you want to go read more, there's principles behind it that help you operationalize these. There's a lot of reading. These are the same in any industry, in any country, in any language. The Agile Manifesto, the links on the bottom of this particular slide, is agilemanifesto.org. You can go read the formal body of work that internationally is accepted for Agile values, but no pressure to do that. The 4 values on the screen is the important part for you to know. Why are these Agile values so important? Why in particular is Agile value number 1 on the screen? What I am so excited for you to think about as it relates to your collaboration. It's telling us that we put people first. Yeah. You might say, Diane, forehead slap. Totally get it. Collaborations are relationships. Relationships are people-based. This isn't about AI. This isn't about whatever tool we might have. You're right. But in case you needed any encouragement or any reinforcement, I should say, there's just a few pretty big reasons why it is so important that we think about the people we're working with more than anything. So groups of people are in themselves complex systems. And we tend to react sometimes and respond in unpredictable ways. So, all right, yeah, that's true. So we've got to keep the people in mind, not just, hey, here's what the process says. We need to think about how we're going to adapt. Our energy and the way that we engage with each other, that is what's going to lead to the ultimate performance, to the impact we're trying to create. So we want to amplify our impact, doing that together, harnessing the power of multiple people, of multiple groups, of multiple organizations. Yeah, that's biology for us. That's saying this is going to work. We're going to take that energy and we're going to make it bigger. We're going to do awesome things together. All right, still need any more convincing? A little bit of neuroscience to go with it as well. The idea of having some feedback loops, some continuous improvement, some iteration to improving how we work together. Yes, also improving the work itself, but really emphasizing how we make working together stronger. Our brains are designed for that. That idea that we're going to have a hypothesis, test something, learn something, grow, that is inherent in who we are. And so this idea of the Agile value, people over processes and tools, that's second nature to us. But we've got to give the structure to let this value be front and center. So if we are constantly putting people first, not process or not tool first, the work that we want to do can thrive. When we think about what it means to be Agile, it is absolutely about work. It's where we see it talked about the most, but it's about the people who are doing the work that creates the great things together. If we keep this conversation on people, it'll become about the relationships that we're building, how we build thoughtful, connected, meaningful relationships, honest and respectful relationships. Those are words that we love to hear about collaborations, whether we're trying to collaborate to build a new community park, or we're trying to get a new policy change implemented in a community, or whether we're trying to get a huge federal grant application out the door. When we think about people and the individuals and interactions, we don't want to let the bureaucracy get us to stop us, to get in our way. Bureaucracy, however we're going to define it in whatever setting, that's process. And it's not that it's not important, but we want to focus on the individuals and our interactions and what impact we're trying to create and say, all right, within the system of bureaucracy that we might be faced with, how can we thrive? How can we get this work done? So what does this really look like? If we're looking at a successful collaboration, how would I know that this was actually happening? If I got to be just a quiet observer of a collaboration, a Zoom meeting, an in-person gathering, a collaborative event, how would I know that this was a successful collaboration? Sometimes in the moment, there's clues. Sometimes it's about observing a collaboration multiple times in order to have enough clues to understand. But here's some of the things that I'd be looking for, I'd be listening for. I'd want to see lots of face-to-face interaction. And I don't mean that we have to be together. It could be digital, cameras on. If I was looking at a collaborative meeting that was digital and it wasn't a lot of cameras on, maybe it was one camera on, I would say that maybe that's not an engaged group of individuals in that moment, right? It's super easy to multitask and do other things. So your technical presence isn't counting necessarily as face-to-face. How do we know that everyone's engaged? If we're in person, it's one thing to say, yep, I'm going to put somebody in the room. But how did we decide what was going to be on the agenda? How did we ensure that all the voices in the room, digital or physical, were being heard? How did we decide who in the collaboration gets to help make decisions? Are we going for consensus? Are we trying to have unanimous decisions? Having those rules laid out in advance, trying to have all voices heard by putting those rules in place, those would be some of the positive things we'd be looking for. And most importantly, how does the team adapt? How are they flexible? How is the collaboration designed so they can react if things don't go quite as planned at any point in their process? What really is a red flag, in fact, I even have my little red flag handy right here. One of my red flags, if I'm watching, listening to, being part of a collaboration, one of the flags that the Agile value, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, has been flipped, and that there's too much emphasis on process, too much emphasis on the tools, is if I see or hear a lot of sharing of documents for asynchronous input. So not while we're together, not discussion based, but hey, can everybody look at this and provide their feedback by 5 o'clock on Friday? Hey, we're going to do all this over here and we're going to build this tool and then we're going to keep updating this document. Like if everything we're hearing is about process for where and how we do the updating, for where and how we get feedback, it's a red flag. Maybe you should say it's a yellow flag. It's not necessarily, maybe we're in a super logistical conversation of a collaboration, but I'm just saying it's one of the things that starts to make me go, wait a second, are we sure that this is like really a meaningful collaboration, or is it a little too one-sided, leaning into, again, processes and tools? Now, don't get me wrong, chat channels are a fantastic way to get some quick communication done, but collaborations outside of organizational walls, we start to get into some tech issues for how are we going to invite folks in, who's paying for which portion, if we've got paid tools that now we've got to invite external collaborators into. And the reality is, while asynchronous chat channels are great, they are not a substitute for meaningful interaction. There is a fantastic case study that shows, and it's not going to be anything that's surprising to you, but shows that the richest form of communication is two or more people gathered in front of a whiteboard. You could say a digital gathering in front of a digital whiteboard. It's about the same. But people, two or more, gathered in front of a whiteboard discussing what they're looking at, the idea or the work product. That is the richest, warmest form of communication. The coldest, least effective method for communication, sharing of a document or other work product asynchronously. There's a whole lot of creativity in between that can happen in terms of some good, warm communication, but I want you to keep that in mind. Think about those two extremes and how, in a collaboration setting, you can do everything possible to bring about, if you're going to take time to be part of a collaboration, let's make it worth it, right? How can you make the communication the richest possible? So I have an example for you. These 4 individuals, from left to right, Donna Rogers, Bethany Planton, Trish Bachman, and Patricia DuBois, they came together from 4 different organizations, 4 different professional paths that brought them together. They came together because they were interested in researching and then publishing research around burnout in the grant professional field. Spoiler alert, the research showed that unfortunately burnout rates are really high with grant professionals. They're constantly doing heroic things. They're constantly bending their own boundaries in order to get this important work done because they know organizations need the money. So the field is rife with burnout. That was their hypothesis before they started their research. The research proved it. Now, these 4 individuals, they all work in very different ways. They all have very unique preferences for which technology systems they prefer to operate in. They have various levels of feelings, strong feelings, in fact, about working in shared documents, whether it be in a Teams SharePoint or in a Google Drive. They have very, very strong preferences each. And the one thing that they knew for sure was that they wanted to do this research together. They thought they were the right group with the right combination of skills and connections in order to do this meaningful research. I want you to think about what example for collaboration is coming to mind for you. This is the example I'm going to point back to a few times as I go through the rest of today's conversation. Could you let me know a little bit about the collaboration that's coming to mind for you? What do you want to think about as we talk about some of these tactics today? Some quick words and phrases in the public chat if you're willing to tell me. Maybe it's about a grant application, maybe it's about a community-wide project, maybe there's an upcoming community needs assessment. I mentioned the park example, the new playground earlier. You let me know. What sort of things are you considering? What's going to be your framing as you think about a collaboration? I doubt that the collaboration I'm using for framing that's on the screen is the one that you're thinking about right now. I'm guessing we all have slightly different ones, but I'd love to hear what you're thinking. Great. Okay, so some community projects. For Becky, if anybody else wants to share, keep, again, your collaboration in mind. Now, if you want to learn more about that Happy Healthy Grant Pro Quartet, the website here, this link takes you to our DH100 Consulting website. There's a blog article that talks about some of their work. In fact, here is one of their old journals from the Grant Professionals Association. All their journal articles are actually available at no cost. You just have to register on the Grant Professionals Association website to download them. So if it's actually work that's of interest to you, let me know and I can help direct you there more. But it's one example of a collaboration. And it's one, and the reason I like to talk about it is because it ebbed and flowed. So it started as a one-time project. Those 4 individuals wanted to come together to do an initial survey. That was part of their research. Do the analysis and publish their results. It turned into a longer-term initiative. Yep, because they found so much and they still had more questions and people were asking them, are you going to do more? And so it ebbed and flowed. Were they in the middle of the study? Were they in the middle of analysis? Were they waiting for the journal to be published? So it was a downtime. It looked different in various periods of each year that they worked together, and it did. It became a longer-term initiative. Sometimes, though, it is just a one-time thing. We're here. We're going to get it done. Other times, you know you are in it together for potentially a long period of time. A lot of our multi-year grant applications that are collaborative in nature, you're in it for 3 to 5 years together. In fact, another example that is in my mind, a group in the Metro Detroit area in Michigan they were required to have collaboration in order to apply for funding from the Office of Violence Against Women. They had to have not only the legal partner, not only did they need to have the domestic violence direct service provider, but they also needed to have domestic violence training providers, and law enforcement. And we're talking about a 5-year grant period. These are groups that were making some long-term commitments together, right? So whether you're thinking that one-time thing, we're going to come together, we're going to put on an awesome event or whatever it's going to be. We're going to do this one project, have this one change, it's going to be awesome. But then we're going to wave, we'll be friendly colleagues after this, but we're done. Or it could be like that big 5-year example. Or my Healthy Grant Pro, it started and they weren't really sure if it would have legs or if it would be a one-time. All of those discussions are welcome. It doesn't change what you think about related to any of these techniques today. So why do we love collaboration? Because it takes our limited resources, and we mean whether it's money or people, time, there's always some restriction to the resources that we have. And so knowing that we've got some restriction on our resources, it takes these different groups with different skills, different backgrounds, different levels of resources, and it's going to say, hey, we've got some shared goals, and we're going to create greater impact as a result. So we're going to have bigger, amplified outcomes, both in the short term for whatever our project is, and hopefully in the long term in our communities. Does anybody want to humble brag about any impact that a collaboration has had that they've been a part of? Go ahead if there's anything you want to humble brag about in the public chat. Would love to hear. I'm thinking about an example. It's actually in my own small community here in far, far upstate New York in the Thousand Islands. And there was a group that puts on a program at the end of every calendar year. They gather funds and resources from local businesses and individuals, and what they end up doing is then donating back to the school backpack programs and to the local food pantries. And this is not a one group sort of activity. This is a very large collaboration because the day of the event, you're putting like 250 to 300 children and their families all in one space. That's not something that a nonprofit organization, in this case it was the Rotary Club, that is not something that just that one group and all of its really awesome 24 members had the resources to put on. They needed to collaborate with the Historic Opera House in order to have a space where they could get everybody in from the elements. Because, far, far upstate New York at the end of the calendar year, snowy and cold. They needed the groups, like the local different high schools that had their student council groups, come be volunteers in order to put on activities, because keeping 250 plus children occupied for a few hours as part of the event, having enough for all of them to do, to be excited, want to stay, that was going to take, like I said, way more than what the 24 individuals in the Rotary Club could do. So they had a shared goal to put on this awesome event, but in service of an even bigger outcome, raising $30,000 for the food pantries and school backpack programs. So just one more example of what this can mean. When we think about these successful collaborations, it's one thing to say, here is our North Star. Here is our big shared goal that we are going to work towards. That is incredibly important so that we all know where we're headed, what direction we want to move in. The collaborations that are the most successful, that have the best outcomes, have open communication, have clear, candid conversations with each other about what works best for my contribution and your contribution. And I have a question about this, or I have some feedback about that. So the process of collaboration and where we're looking for our Agile values to be present, we want to know what is that big thing that we're working towards. What is the shared goal? And so you might say, Diane, this is Agile? Yes, this is what it means to be Agile, to be clear and transparent about what are our priorities, what is our big goal that we're working towards. That in itself, Agile. Because if we have this long-term big idea, this thing that we want to drive towards, now we can think about, well, what different ways, what creative ways could we get from point A to point B, from our current state to our desired future state? How could our relationships, how could we build those and be creative in order to uniquely get to that final stage? You don't have to tell me if you've ever been part of a collaboration that didn't have a clear, big goal that you are working towards. Think about your example, the one that I asked you. Have a collaboration in mind. Do you currently know what is it that we're working towards? It could be that highly collaborative, highly competitive, big federal grant. It could be we want to have this new playground open by the time school starts this upcoming year. So like late summer, early fall. It could be, I'm going to refer back to that Rotary Club example, it could be that we want to have 10% more children and raise 25% more funds. That's what we want to have. Okay, very different North Stars that all of those collaborations are working towards. But now that it's clear, we can start to think about which players are right and how will we learn to trust people that maybe we've never worked with before. Some of these examples, one-time things. The playground, the one-time thing, get it up, get it done. Hopefully somebody's going to maintain it, fix the mulch, do the repairs, whatever are needed, but it's not a long-term partnership that's required. The multi-year grant application, yeah, that's long-term, 3 to 5 years, 5 in that particular case. That takes some long-term partnership. The year-end event that I was talking about with the Rotary Club, you could argue that there's some of both. There's some partners that come in 1 year, but not the next. But the long-term partnership of who is leading the collaborative effort, we would argue that that is part of what makes that collaboration. Even if you've got different players sometimes, you've got like kind of the same coach for the collaboration. In any of those settings, any of the examples that I have given you, all of them benefit from having a team working agreement. So this is an Agile technique, an Agile way of working that helps us to ensure that in any collaboration that's coming together for any particular purpose, one time or long term, we have shared understanding of what our shared goals are, and we are starting to learn more about our collaborative players so that we have some guardrails for how we're going to work together. It takes time to build trust. We don't come to a new collaborative group and snap our fingers and trust is there. No, it takes time to build trust. And so the team working agreement is a first step in building trust. Now, why is this going to be so helpful? All right. Folks don't come to collaboration because they're looking for something to do. They're busy. They've got a long list of things. So folks come to a collaboration because they want to do meaningful work together. They want to see the amplified impact. No one ever comes to a collaboration and says, hey, on today's list of things to do is for us to be mediocre in our work together. No, I've never had that happen. I've never seen that, heard that. Certainly you haven't either. They come to the collaboration from their wide variety of backgrounds and working environments because they want to do something great together. Now, sidebar, occasionally some funders will, I want to say, they will strongly encourage collaboration. We have seen some groups, I'm not going to name these particular funders that we've seen over the years, but they'll say, oh, all the senior service organizations in this community, we're going to pull you together. And then I'll give you lunch, but we're going to come together and we're going to have a collaboration discussion to make sure that we're not having duplication of services. A little bit of a forced collaboration, right? They're the folks with the money, and so people show up. I'm going to put those aside as an exception. Usually people come together to the collaboration because they want to amplify the impact together. They want to be a part of reaching that shared goal. So we're going to have that positive assumption about why people are there. We also are going to make a positive assumption that there are a whole variety of different preferences in this room, but that everybody in that room, digital or physical, has awesome, unique skills that are going to make the output and the outcome of this collaboration better than if they weren't there. So what the working agreement allows to happen is for folks to understand, why are we working together? Let's make sure we have shared understanding about it. What is it we want to try and achieve together? Good if we, again, can agree on that. And how do we think? It's a hypothesis. How do we think we will best work together? This goes back to the individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Our hypothesis on how we will work together is just that. If we're coming together for the first time, we don't know the perfect ways that we're going to work together. So, yeah, we might have to adapt. We might have to adjust as we see how things with our collaboration come together. I'm curious, the way I've just described a team working agreement, has anyone ever put this in place for a collaboration or been part of a collaboration where this was put in place? Let me know. Y for yes, question mark if you're not sure, N for no. Has anyone ever been part of a process where this team working agreement idea may have been in place? Now I'm going to describe the team working agreement today and pretend like it's for our collaborations. But I also want to flag that team working agreements are fantastic to have within your own organization, within your own four walls, with your own team. They're just as awesome there. But today we're thinking broader, bigger. We're thinking about collaboration, either two teams coming together or two or more organizations coming together. So we're thinking about the collaboration for why, but please put a little pin in this and think about team working agreements for your own team in the future. I love that too. So where are we going to use these team working agreements? It could be, I'm going to let you think about it, some of those permanent teams. It can be those one-time collaborations. It can be the big, long-term collaborations where we come together, like that Healthy Grants Pro example. Imogene, I see your question. Is this agreement similar to team rules during a facilitation process? It is related. The team rules part is going to be one element of the team working agreement. So yeah, it's definitely related, but it is more robust than only the team rules. If you have been part of collaborations where the team rules, those ground rules are set, that's a really good start. That's only one component of what is going to help make your collaboration thrive and keep people, those individuals and interactions, front and center over the processes and tools. But yes, you are absolutely right, related. So our working agreements are going to have four main elements to them, regardless of which template you might consider or how you might approach them when you come together as a team. We want to have team working agreements that ensure shared understanding about purpose, shared understanding about the goals that we're working towards. We're going to have the working styles. That's going to sound kind of like the team rules that Imogene just talked about in the public chat. And we want to understand who is part of the collaboration, what is being brought to the collaboration. So we're going to talk about some skills, we're going to talk about some values that help support, that are foundational to what is the collaboration. When we look at our working agreement, there is one template that my team and I, we gravitate towards this one. I'm not saying this is like the absolute perfect team working agreement. Far from it. There are lots of templates that you could choose. There are lots of templates built into digital whiteboard tools. You don't need to have a template at all. You could even just have some headings that you might put up on a whiteboard or that you put in a document. Whatever works best for you. But the reason that we return to this one over and over, and I'm going to walk through each of the sections, is that it they each have different segments. And here I told you there were 4 things in working agreements. Like, Diane, there's 5 things. We like to call out some of these different components. We feel like it gives us a little more oomph by having the values talked about as well. Sometimes we'll see purpose, goals, roles and skills, rules and activities. I find there to be a lot of, well, value in talking about the values. What are the things that are going to be consistent, that are going to be important for the collaboration to keep in mind? Because what you're really doing is you're blending organizational cultures and collaborations. And so the values portion of the discussion helps to ensure alignment about what's important to this particular group as we focus on this very unique purpose. So that's part of why we really enjoy this template. But let's start with the purpose. What is the purpose that we want to have visible as a result of a team working agreement? You could do a working agreement with a new collaboration in 1 hour or less. You might have to, if the group has never seen anything like this, give a little bit of context. What is it we're doing? Why is it that we're getting together for this 1 hour time-boxed event or meeting? The idea behind it, what I would make is your pitch. By spending time building this team working agreement now, it's not that it's set in stone. This is a living document. We will continue to adjust as needed, but because we are blending different team cultures or different organizational cultures, this is going to set the stage for us to learn more about each other, have some increased shared understanding, and be the most successful collaboration we think possibly that we can be. So this purpose is, why are we here? Why are we working together? If the collaboration that you're talking about is within one organization, it's really easy. You might be like, well, we're here to collaborate in service of our organization's mission. My playground example. We are together in order to fundraise and implement, get built, get ready to roll, do the ribbon cutting, this brand new playground so that it's ready for the new school year. The Healthy Grant Pro example. We're coming together because we want to do some research into burnout in the grant writer field, in the grant professional field, and publish it so that others can learn from it as well. I keep going, but I think you get the idea. What is it that we all agree on? Does it have to be perfectly wordsmithed? No. Does it need board level approval for why we're together? I don't think so. This is meant to be however many people or organizations are around the table in the room that we agree, yeah, this is why we're together. In fact, worked once with 32 organizations. Yes, I said that right. 32 organizations on one very large federal application. It was a big one. And we did the team working agreement still in just 1 hour, but we needed to all agree. Why were we there? Oh, that one was pretty easy. We are here to put together a highly competitive grant application that would support our anti-terrorism preparation project. Check the box, right? So that one was like a quick one that everybody agreed to, but you have to state it so that we all understand, why are we here? Are there any questions? Is there anything else we should consider? That one would make it so that we could move on to the next one. So here, I have exactly what I just said. That 32 organization example. Yeah, let's write a collaborative, competitive grant application. People, can you imagine having 32 different organizations all giving feedback on one application? Whew, that is a lot of shared feedback. It's a great happy ending of the story, though, which is why I love to talk about it. I don't think it would have secured funding, got the top score of all the proposals. I don't think that would have happened if we had not taken the time on the very first full collaborative meeting to put the working agreement in place. Too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen otherwise. The working agreement helped give us the structure necessary for success. All right, so then let's build the second part of our working agreement. What are our goals? We've got our clear purpose, we've agreed on it. Now, what are the things that we want to accomplish? If it's like a collaboration within one organization, so 2 teams or more within an organization, we might be pulling from our strategic plan. But if we're talking about multiple organizations coming together, the working agreement is going to be about what are we trying to accomplish maybe in the next 6 months to a year, unless it is something that is such a one-time thing that it is a much shorter time box. And sure, yeah, your clear goals are going to be set in what that time box is. Some teams that are agile will talk about these as product goals, as team goals, but they're big rocks, they're milestones. People that love to talk about wildly important goals, that's another agile-related phrase that comes from the book, the four disciplines of execution. Those wildly important goals, same idea. They're the things that we're working towards in service of our bigger purpose. So a lot of different labels folks might have from them that they bring from their organization in their own style. That's all fine. We want them to be shared goals, the things that are going to be milestones along the way towards our bigger purpose that we can accomplish, that we can say, yeah, oh, we're making good progress. Yeah, we got that goal done. Oh, yep, we got that one too. Oh, we got 2 of our 4 on our way to big purpose. We can see progression as a group. In our working agreement as it related to that big application, the 32 organization collaboration, their biggest goal, they said their purpose of why they were together, but their big goal was to secure funding. Well, now who am I to argue with that? That is a goal that it outlasts the nature of just the one application. It left the door open that they might collaborate on future applications together. That's a big long-term goal. But they had some smaller goals too. They did not want to submit on the day of the deadline. Submitting on the day of the deadline in grants.gov is a very stressful proposition because there's all sorts of validations that happen and approval things behind the scenes. And so usually you want to submit at least 3 to 5 days before a federal grant deadline. So they knew that they wanted to actually submit, they said 1 whole week before the deadline. So that was one of their goals. Might as well have that as well. So they called out some more nuanced things that were important to them as well. But they also, I wanted to point out, had this huge big one that could have made this a much longer term collaboration than only this one application. When we build our working agreement, we also want to think about what are the rules, and this goes to what Imogene had mentioned in the public chat. What are the things that are going to guide our work? We're coming from different organizations, we're coming from different personal preferences, different organizational preferences, different organizational IT policies. Yeah, that one often is what trips this up. So these become some of the rules for how we work together. And it is important to decide, can we all work in Drive? Can we all work in SharePoint? Who has sort of like the harshest rules that we have to abide by? How can we meet that standard so that they can be part of the collaboration? Instead of kind of like the lowest common denominator, we want to be like, what's the worst thing that we know for the partners that are at the table that we need to abide by? But there's more to consider in terms of our rules, in terms of our work styles. We might also consider, do we text each other? Do we do group emails where we reply all? Do we only do email with attachments? Go ahead, give me any examples that come to mind for you of things that have been guardrails related to some team rules, things you have experienced in collaborations. Go ahead, there's no right or wrong answer, just what sort of things have you experienced for structure that were some of those guardrails, some of those rules for the team for how you would work together in any collaborations you've been a part of. In that 32 organization example, they said drafting in Google Drive got a thumbs up. There was no one involved that had an IT policy that had a concern with that. Good. All right. So now we got a plan. They said that we're going to have a weekly collaborative meeting. And anybody that can come is invited. Not everyone has to be there. It's not going to be an hour long. They said it was going to be a 30-minute check-in. How were things progressing? Were there any impediments? Was there anything that we needed to have like those who are present quickly brainstorm on? They also said there could be individual working sessions outside of that for particular sections. They said that it would be full group email. Yes, 32 organizations, right? That is quite the to field and the CC field, but not text or chat. Because, well, that also, now who can get where, and that's actually more people than you can put in the group chats. So like there was a lot of behind why on the tech side, that didn't feel right. So they had to go more, say, old school and say, we're going to do some emails. Let's be thoughtful, though, about when we're going to hit reply all. Okay, like let's be careful about each other's inboxes. So they had to agree on what that would look like. And they actually had to discuss and debate who was going to be the lead applicant. There were actually multiple choices. They might say this sounds like roles and skills, but they treated it as a rule. This is who we want to be the lead applicant. This is who we think is going to, therefore, when we're in discussion, this is why it was important why it was in rules and activities, when we're in meetings, when we're in discussion, or when we're in debate, in a document, people have differing opinions. This group, the lead organization, the one who's going to be legally liable for clicking submit, for implementing and doing grant management stuff, that group gets the final say. They're the ones that when they click submit, take on all that responsibility. They are the ultimate tiebreaker if there is any sort of debate in the process. That was actually, that played out. That was super helpful to have because as you get closer and closer to the deadline, you're like, I don't have time to wait for 32 people to respond. We got to go with that final group is going to get that say. And so they had agreed on that, that organization and the person who was leading their contribution to the application, they were where that final decision point was going to sit. All right, so what other rules and activities could you have? Oh my gosh, you could have so many. If you end up at 10, that might be too many. So there's no perfect number, except for the 10 is too many. So maybe it's you only need 3, maybe you need 5. It'll depend on the collaboration and the folks that are there. Double digits is too many. Now the collaboration, folks are here. If you are in a collaboration where you get the opportunity to do a team working agreement, remember how there were 4 types of collaboration on the screen earlier? Right. So that usually implies we're not talking about networking, we're not talking about coordination, we're not talking about cooperation. If we're in the stages and folks are engaged in a team working agreement, they're willing to do this, that usually is a good indicator we're at that higher level of collaboration that meets what a lot of funders would even use as a definition. The collaboration, though, as it relates to a working agreement, is about who is present, what skills, what talents, what is there, who brings what expertise. Now, I'm going to ask some questions, and you can decide if you want to answer in the public chat or not, but it might sort of help mimic what would it be like if we were in a new collaboration. We're thinking about trying this technique as a way to get everything laid out so that we can then, after this hour, start cruising. Like, let's get the work done. All right. How many of you love budgets? Y for yes, N for no. Do you love budgets? And I'll even put the word budgets in the chat. Okay, under the word budgets, let's put Y for yes. You could use S for sort of. N for no. Do you love budgets? And none of us are judging your answers. This is truly just information gathering for us if we were going to do a collaboration. So do you love budgets? Y for yes, N for no, S for sort of. All right. Oh, we've got an interesting mix. Great. Okay, so we don't need to do anything with that quite yet. But we're all like, oh, that's interesting, right? People are like, oh, Bianca said yes. All right, I'm going to file that one away for later. Okay, now let's try this one. Who loves logic models. I have just typed that into the public chat. Underneath, go ahead and let me know Y for yes, S for sort of, N for no. Do you love logic models? Oh, see, now this one, now my ears have perked up. Imogene said yes. Greg said yes. Elizabeth said yes. Please let the record reflect that this never happens in a collaboration when I ask, that we get multiple people who say yes to logic models. I'm always like, oh, I got one. I'm going to remember that one when we get to that part of whatever the project is. 4 yeses on logic models. It makes my heart so happy. That is so cool. Also, like I said, a little unusual, but I love it. Okay, let's do, who is super in favor of copy editing? Not like we all know it's important, but you're like, oh, I get to have the red pen. You're going to let me look for the Oxford commas. You're going to let me look at like gerunds. I had to look those up again the other day, right? When it's a verb with an ing. I was like, thank heavens for Grammar Girl. I love that website. It just helps me. But yeah, how do you feel about copy editing? Y for yes, you're there. Red pen in hand. S, sort of. N, no, not my favorite activity. Again, zero judgment in any of your answers. All right, now and we've got a mix, right? So some of us that love logic models are not into copy editing, or vice versa. But can you see what's happening? Just take a quick peek. I asked about 3 things, and I'm using like, we're going to produce something. And I probably have Grant somewhere in my head anchoring me here as I'm asking this. But when we think about these 3 different types of skills, if these are things that we know are going to be important to our success for whatever purpose we have put forward, I can tell, and again, there's no judgment in what this is, but when it comes time for budget, I'm like, all right, let's make sure that we've got Bianca at the meeting when we're going to start talking about the budget design, because that's a strength for them, and we really want to make sure that that's part of the conversation. And oh my gosh, we've got lots of people when we get ready to have logic model discussions. Why don't we actually start with this group as a little working group? Pretend you were my 32 organization-wide collaboration. Like, oh, the 4 of you that said logic models, can the 5 of us get together and do a draft logic model together as one of our working sessions, and then we'll bring it to the whole group? I have no doubt that y'all will be like, where, when, let's do it. And everyone else is like, thank you so much for your willingness to do that, because that was not our happy spot. And then someone else says, oh, but I'm ready. When it comes time for copy editing, make sure you put me on that list. I want to be a copy editor or a mock reviewer. All of a sudden it becomes clear, where can people's special skills, their preferences, their awesome expertise, their passions, where can it be used? That's what we're noting when it comes time to think about our roles and skills in the upper right-hand corner up here. I went in the wrong order for my clicking, sorry about that. So I put some names to the people who are like, I would be looking to. I know in the particular collaboration, if I need anything edited, Jane is there for it. Jane loves it. Very polite and fierce red pen. But I also know that actually if Krista's there in Jane's place that particular meeting, Krista makes a lovely, lovely line when providing edits. It's up to you. I won't arm wrestle you for it, but you can think about which is going to be. This is like both are technically right. You can decide which one it's going to be for you. Lovely, lovely, lovely. But Jana, in this collaboration in my mind, is always going to be about the logic models. She's going to hang out with Imogene and Greg and Elizabeth and Bianca. Absolutely loves logic models. Now Maggie, and some of you may have even met Maggie from my team. If Maggie's there, Maggie is always going to raise her hand and say, I'm going to help you with the SMART objectives. I love drafting SMART objectives. Please, please, please make sure I'm at that meeting. That's my favorite thing. You want to know all those things. But in sharing what we learn about each other in terms of our passions, this is where we can say, great. So we're coming from very different professional organizations where we are right now. We've got very different backgrounds for how we all got to where we are right now. Our organizations might by themselves have separate value statements. what do we bring to the table as values that are overlapping? What are things that we say are values that indeed are going to be present for all of us? You could, if folks are like, I don't know, right? If like people are kind of quiet and not sure what to share, you could go all the way back in this handout of the slides, and you could go back to those Agile values, and you'd have one at a minimum that you could suggest. You could say, I propose that we agree all of our actions are guided by the fact that we want to value individuals and interactions in this collaboration more than be driven by processes and tools. And there you go. That would start the ball rolling. So if you're looking for like how to break the ice on the values conversation, you can always drop that Agile value. It's part of our actual session. Yeah, you can drop that right here as one of your draft items and see what people think. And maybe that, hopefully, that gets the ball rolling. More people are now talking. But so it might be that the transparency of how decisions are made, or the transparency related to how like the budget is distributed across the collaborative partners, those might all be things that come out in values. It could be inclusion in terms of all voices, for all 32 members have the opportunity to be heard, have the opportunity to read the draft, have the opportunity to contribute in meaningful ways to what's being proposed. That there's openness to candid feedback. Yeah, actually, just last week, we had a native learning session all about feedback, how to give meaningful feedback, how to receive meaningful feedback. It's not easy. It's not. So that openness to how do we, given that there's so many different organizational cultures, so many different structures for the styles of feedback provided, how are we open to each other and to making our impact the strongest collectively that we can? So, oh my gosh, we did it. We have all 5 sections created. Now, as I talked through it, I was like, whew, 1 hour, huh? Yeah, 1 hour. Absolutely. I've seen teams do it in like 30 minutes. The 32 organization group, to get it done in an hour, did feel just a little hairy, a little fast. But we still do it, especially if you let people know what's going to happen, right? If you share the agenda in advance, here's the sort of thing we're going to talk about. Here's why it's important. Here's how spending this time here is actually going to make everything else go faster. Yeah. People are like, oh, okay, thanks. So if you can give a little context, in fact, if you want to even share the team working agreements that is your handout in class today, you could even share this with your collaborative partners in advance. They don't need to spend a whole lot of time prepping, but if they understand the context of what the activity will be, that might then just even save you a few more minutes so that you've got that for getting the agreement work done together. When we think about our team working agreement, the reason we spend the time upfront to do that is so that now, when we think about how do we operationalize this working agreement, how does it help us in our actions, whatever our collaborative activities are, how does this team working agreement help us? It helps us by keeping the people who are doing this work in service of that heart-centered purpose, in service of those goals that were in that upper left-hand corner. It helps us to keep the people doing the work front and center, but to be adaptable, because we might have turnover in an organization in the middle of a collaboration. We might have people that have never worked together, that have very different opinions about what is the right way to do the work, or the right way to propose what the actual activities are in the logic model of said project. So we've got a whole bunch of people, anywhere from, well, I say 2, I'm like, again, talking about my 32 organization example. We need to create psychological safety in a group that is potentially, almost very likely, never worked together before. Could you let me know how many of you have heard the phrase psychological safety before? Y for yes, M for maybe. You think you have, N for no. You feel confident that this is a new phrase. The idea of psychological safety is one that Amy Edmondson started to research and has published now multiple times over the last few decades about psychological safety in a wide range of teams. And her first book on it was published by Wiley. It's called The Fearless Organization. Please do consider your local independent bookstores or libraries if you're looking for this book. It's both on the bookshelf here, so it's physical copy. Also, there's an audio version, but always available through libraries. And the idea of psychological safety is that if you are in a team environment that has psychological safety in place, the people in the team, the people in the group are going to feel comfortable speaking up and sharing ideas or saying, I'm not sure if I agree with that. Have we considered this other idea instead? Oh, you've got some feedback for me related to my work? Okay, all right, I would welcome the feedback. I want to continuously improve. Those are some of the things that you hear in a team that has psychological safety or in a collaboration that is building psychological safety. Just like building trust takes time, building psychological safety is not a light switch moment. It takes time. But that team working agreement, especially around the values portion that I said I love so much about the template we use, that starts to build the foundational elements of psychological safety. Having a facilitator that is identified, that is trusted by as many members of the collaboration, maybe known by as many members of the collaboration as possible, can give you a jump start on psychological safety. So having that known interface of who's going to be a facilitator, maybe a little bit about what's their style, how they ensure that all voices are heard, so that can be a little bit of a head start on psychological safety. Because when we think about our collaborations, whether it was the playground or the burnout research or that Rotary volunteer event or the 32-person grant application, how do we know how we're progressing from the time we agree on why we're together until the time that we've reached the milestone? Some form of check-in. You don't have to tell me if you've ever been to a check-in for a collaboration or other sort of work thing where you're like, oh, this could have been an email. We didn't all have to gather for this. In a collaborative setting, you want whoever's going to facilitate to be very judicious about when and where they have folks gather. In fact, it might be called out in the team rules portion of the working agreement. We saw in my example that they'd called for a weekly opportunity. Attendance was not mandatory. They agreed that they would share the agenda in advance so that folks could decide who was going to attend from an organization. Did someone need to attend from the organization? So that level of transparency up front, let people opt in to the check-ins, but the cadence was set. Everyone knew that they were welcome, that they could at any point on that weekly cadence hop on and learn what was happening. That worked for them. That Healthy Grant Pro group, they did not meet with such rigid structure and cadences because, one, it was a smaller group, so it's a little easier to play calendar Jenga, and two, it depended on where they were in the ebb and flow of the work they were doing together, of their purpose, for how often it felt right to check in. The two different extremes, both totally acceptable. Some collaborations benefit from collaborative working sessions. In Agile teams, they'll sometimes refer to that as what's called swarming. Think about swarming. You think about a whole lot of bees coming together to do one thing. I'm allergic to bees, so I'm not trying to please, it's not about I don't want to have to get my EpiPen, but when bees come together and they're swarming and they're like the hive, right? Positive stuff. So lots of workers come together, lots of collaborative partners come together, and when they're thinking about swarming, it's all focusing on one shared thing together. So if that phrase helps people to understand what you want the energy to be, how they're all together focusing on one shared thing, that's fine. But like a collab session, having that on a calendar, hey, we've got a collab session for our collaboration coming up, and it's going to be logic models. You know based on what people said in the chat, you know who's showing up for that particular collab. And you also know who might opt out of that one. That's totally fine. So those transparent structures for what you're going to put forward for some of the informal events can let people opt in or out based on their skills and special elements that they want to bring to the collaboration. The more we build the collaboration together, the more we have shared ownership, whether it's 2 teams, 32 organizations, or anything in between, the more that there is that shared ownership among everyone involved, the stronger the sustainability for that collaboration, whether it's meant to be going on forever or it's about lessons learned that get shared out in the community. So the idea of that co-design will again come to who is appropriate to facilitate, who is best maybe to invite people to the collaboration, who is best to do the kickoff for a collaborative meeting that's being held. In the case of that 32 organization collaboration, it was Melton, the director of emergency services for the county. When Melton was ready to speak, everybody listened. He had already built the respect of most of those organizations. There were a few he didn't know well, but his presence and his work, yeah, it entered the room before he did. They knew who he was. And so that gave some credibility to the work of what was about to happen. People were willing to trust him a little bit more from the beginning than if it had been, for example, me, the grant professional that was in the room that was going to then be like kind of handed the baton to co-facilitate. But if I had walked in by myself to that room of 32 organizations without Melton already being known as the voice, as the person asking people to participate, wouldn't have gone as well. Absolutely. Now, what else do we look for? The way that we ask for feedback. And again, I'm going to point to last week's Native Learning Center webinar on feedback, because I know that you can go see previous Native Learning Center webinars, and that's 90 minutes just talking about feedback. So here's the thimble little version of it. There's lots of creative ways that you can ask for feedback that are more than, could you please provide your input in this document by 5 p.m. on Friday? All your collaborative partners are just as busy outside of the collaboration as you are. Time is tight, resources are tight. Try to be creative when you think about what is the best way to get feedback from a whole bunch of different collaborative voices that is different than asynchronous document feedback. Could be science fair style, could be quick on-screen sharing, it could be the use of perfection game. These are some of the things that I talk about in that feedback webinar. I'm going to let Brooke make sure to tell you when we wind up here in a minute, when we wrap up, how to get to those, because I don't want to say it wrong. But that is a 90-minute expansion of this particular slide that I think is really helpful for collaborations. And last but maybe most importantly, you need to be flexible in everything about the collaboration. You've got plans, we're going to need to adapt. People in and out, right? Different perspectives. This is why individuals and interactions over processes and tools should be your guiding value for everything related to your collaboration. That's not a strict, here's what that means sort of value. That's a, here's what should drive your actions. Here's something that should guide your decisions. Here's something that should guide your facilitation. So I will leave you with that. Now, I could talk about all things collaboration, all things Agile, yeah, hours. Brooke could attest to that. Like, give me the mic for the whole day and we would have some fun. But you've been amazing hanging out in the public chat, answering questions and interacting. I didn't see any questions in the public chat. But if you have any questions, now would be a great time to type them in. But you are also always welcome to reach out to me directly. Got my email on the screen right now. It's diane@dhleonardconsulting.com. Thank you, Brooke. Just put the link to today's handout. That team working agreement is in the public chat for you. But you are welcome to reach out at any time over, even if it's social. You're like, I feel like LinkedIn direct messages is a whole lot easier than just one more email. That's fine. I'm happy to chat with you there too, wherever it works best for you. So please feel free to reach out. And ask follow-up questions after today. I don't see any questions in the public chat, so Brooke, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Diane. All right, folks. As Diane mentioned, we do have that webinar feedback survey. I did put the link in the chat for you. The first one is that resource item that Diane shared, the team working agreement. There's a link to that, and then the webinar feedback survey is just below it. Just takes a minute or two to complete for us. It is anonymous. You don't have to worry about your email or your name being attached to it. Just lets us know what's working well and what we can improve upon for the future. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That'll be this Thursday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, or 10 a.m. Alaska. And that is going to be grant management for tribal housing professionals. That'll be with Vince Franco. You'll be able to check out this as well as our other recorded webinars on our YouTube channel. It'll take overnight for the recording for this one to generate, but I will post it tomorrow morning. And we have a whole playlist called the Kathita Webinars Archive, like you see pictured. And that goes back about 2.5 years. So it's a great resource. YouTube is free for you to use. And we hope you can check out our other upcoming events. We post about them to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We have our in-house produced podcast, the Hope of Being a Native American podcast, which you can listen to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Or if you like to watch the interviews with our special guests, we post those to our YouTube channel as well. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to the webinar. Diane, thank you so much for giving an amazing webinar. And I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day.